Hello and welcome to this very short introduction to our work on decision scoring rules. So we consider a setting where there's an agent, let's call her Alice. She owns a startup, for example, and she has to choose from some set of strategies for a startup. There's also an external expert on business strategy, let's call him Bob. He just wants to maximize his own profit. And we wonder, what kind of mechanisms can Alice use to incentivize Bob to reveal some of his beliefs about how good these different strategies are. Here's a very simple example. Alice could just go to Bob, give him 3% of her startup, and ask what strategy is best. Bob is now incentivized, if he wants to maximize his profit, to simply tell Alice what strategy he really believes to be best for her or for her startup. He does this, let's say the example is strategy 2, and he has no reason to provide any further info. So for example, he has no reason to tell Alice how good the other strategies would have been. And we here imagine that Alice then just chooses the recommended strategy 2. The question we ask in the paper is, what other types of mechanisms can Alice use to elicit information from Bob about the different strategies for a startup? Here's another example mechanism. Again, Alice starts by giving Bob some share in the startup, let's say 1%, and then asks for a recommendation, which Bob provides honestly for the same reason as before. But now Alice further asks whether Bob wants to buy another 1% in the startup for $1,000. To answer this question, Bob will ask himself whether the startup will be worth at least $100,000 under the recommended strategy 2. And let's say the answer here is yes. Then he accepts the offer. Alice could make another such offer, now at a higher price of $2,000. Again, Bob asks himself the analogous question of whether the startup is worth at least $200,000 under strategy 2. Let's say that the answer is yes again, then he accepts the offer once more. But then at the next higher offer, let's say that Bob rejects. Now, what is the result of all this? Well, some transfers have been made. Bob has received 3% of the startup for a price of $3,000. And Alice has 97% of her startup left and has received the $3,000 from Bob. More importantly, for the purpose of this paper, Alice now knows that strategy 2 is best, and that if she follows strategy 2, the expected value of her startup is between $200,000 and $300,000. And all of this is, of course, according to Bob's beliefs. Now, this was again just one particular mechanism. So in the paper, we provide a full characterization of all truthful mechanisms for this setting. So first, there are some impossibilities. So the first one is kind of obvious. It is impossible for Alice to strictly incentivize Bob to make honest predictions about non-recommended strategies. And this is because in our setting, these strategies are never tested. Perhaps more surprisingly, it is impossible for Alice to strictly incentivize Bob to make any predictions for the recommended action other than its expected utility or expected value. So for example, it is impossible for Alice to strictly incentivize Bob to reveal the probability of a particular outcome without messing with the incentive, with Bob's incentive to recommend the best action. And then we provide formal characterizations of all mechanisms. We do this in this scoring rule formalism. Don't have time, unfortunately, to look at these in detail here. But one of these characterizations in particular lends itself to a very intuitive interpretation, which is that all truthful mechanisms that Alice can use can be interpreted as selling Bob shares in her project at different prices. So the example mechanism that we considered earlier is indicative of all truthful mechanisms for this setting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see some of you at our poster.